Thank you to Squarespace for being today's video sponsor. Hello and welcome to the House of Valentina. I'm Valentina and we just wrapped on 2022 trends that are going to be sticking around. And I thought it would be really helpful to talk about the trends that we are definitely not going to be seeing moving forward. And there's quite a few. So make sure you hit subscribe and give the video a big thumbs up. We're almost out of coffee, but I think we'll make it through today's video. Cheers, you guys. Let's jump into trends for 2022 that we will not be seeing in 2023, and you should not be investing your money into because I don't think you're gonna really want them. Let's jump in. This one's gonna be interesting. Trends are one of those things that a lot of times people get very bent out of shape about because they feel like it's a waste of money and they don't like buying things and feeling like they have to get rid of them. I actually am very much like those people. I don't like to get rid of my stuff. I don't like to feel like I've wasted my money. And that's why I think trend videos are actually really important. We've already talked about the trends that we think will be sticking around, the ones that I think are worth investing your money into. But today's are ones that you may want to think twice about. Maybe it's something that you really love and you still want to continue to invest your money in. There's always going to be somebody that loves something and it really sticks with them and it resonates with them. Those are the trends that you should keep in your life, and it doesn't really matter whether the whole world is doing it or not. The trends right now is that it's diversity. That is the biggest trend that is happening globally right now. And it's all about embracing you, embracing what you love, and finding your tribe all over the world. And I love that. So a lot of these are ones that you may still want to invest in and you're gonna really love, and you just go for it. But some of these, if you're really thinking about resale value, if you're thinking about building a home where you're really investing your money wisely over time, and not wanting to get rid of things regularly, these are things you may want to just pass on. So first of all is multifunctional spaces. And those of you living in small apartments in New York City or in a big city are gonna be like, yeah, okay, we need spaces that are multifunctional. But it's not that you can't have multifunctional spaces. But I think that when the pandemic was going on, we were so focused on every space now has to become multiple things. And I think that now we're realizing that I need a little bit of separation from my activities. I want to get up and leave one room and go to the other one. So it's thundering again. It's a rainy day in Georgia. So I don't think that a multifunctional space is something that's just gone. Like, that's absurd, right? Multifunctional spaces are something that are very practical. If you need to make the most out of a space and you needed to do several items and several things on your list, multifunctional spaces are something that it's something that we're gonna be utilizing still. But the idea of really every space of your home having to be multifunctional, I think we've kind of gotten tired of it, to where it's like, I don't want to necessarily work out in my bedroom, sleep, work, eat. Like, I want to get up and go somewhere. And so I think that's where this is kind of coming from. It's really all about maybe creating a specific room for an activity rather than trying to combine them all into one space. I want to take just a moment and thank our video sponsor for today, which is Squarespace. We absolutely love Squarespace. It's how we launched our own House of Valentina website, our blog, our shop. We've had it all. And we found that Squarespace was such an incredible platform for us to be able to launch our brand online. We just absolutely love Squarespace because it's very user-friendly. There's so many beautiful templates that you can choose from. You can really personalize it. We really talk about personalizing your home, and I think personalizing your space online is also really important. It really needs to serve all the purposes that you need it to, whether you're wanting to use it as a portfolio or you're gonna have a shop, if you wanna be able to chat with friends, or you're wanting to launch your entire business and you wanna have a storefront, you wanna have a blog, a website, you can have it all. And that's why I think Squarespace is an ideal way to be able to launch yourself online, and we absolutely love it. So head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/House of Valentina to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. I'll leave all the details for Squarespace down in the show notes, and thank you again to Squarespace for being our video sponsor. Speaking of things that came out of the pandemic, so homework rooms. Homework rooms were all the rage. A lot of parents, I don't even call them homeschool rooms, because a lot of parents were like, I don't want to even talk about this being homeschool. I mean, I was one of those parents. I had a kid that was homeschooling during the pandemic. And yeah, I definitely thought about having a homework room. It's easier when you have somewhere to go to. You can create a little bit of a rhythm with your kids. Everyone's not sitting at the dining room table. You're trying to cook dinner, have conversation. Somebody's trying to get homework done. Somebody's done with theirs. It's just kind of chaotic. So I totally get why a lot of people were really focused on creating homework rooms, but thankfully, it seems that most of the kids are back in school now. And now you might want to have a homeschool room if you've decided to go that direction, but that's different. That's a permanent solution that you're going to be having in your space. And if you're going to be permanently homeschooling, it's definitely something to consider. It goes back to that whole idea. This is all about what is going to work for you, and is this a wise way of investing your money? Let's talk about the 70s. The 70s made a major comeback, and I just don't think it's going to stick around. I think that 70s are very nostalgic. A lot of things came out of the pandemic, this time period, really, right? Like every trend that came from 2022 was really a reaction to what was going on the 2 years prior. I feel like this is really just reactionary. And that's why trends are something that we really have to look at and identify whether it's something that is a reaction and we're gonna want this forever. Like if you put the pool in, are you gonna want it 5 years from now, or did you just want it during the lockdown? These are the kinds of things that I really like to talk about with my clients, because I wanna make sure that I help them in this journey to creating their home and hopefully creating a space that will be long lasting and their money was well spent. So for me, 70s are just, the oranges and a lot of the patterns. I just feel like they've been really, it's so nostalgic. But I just feel like for a lot of people, they just feel done. And I think a lot of people that went through the 70s just don't really want it back again. Like they've already experienced it and they've already ripped it out of their homes at least once. And so they don't want it again. And so a lot of times it's the younger generations that'll grab something and repurpose it and reuse it in a new way. But I think the 70s are just something that are just a little, it's just a little too 70s. It's just been there, done that. No, let's just move on. I think that's kind of where it is. Now, the next one is the 80s. And I don't think that the 80s are completely gone. I think that we're going to keep seeing a little bit more of the 80s. And I think that these decade trends are very interesting because a lot of them have to do with what we see in fashion. And again, fashion, just like interiors, there's really that sort of response to what's going on around us, the way that we dress, the way that how we want to prepare ourselves for a day, what kind of clothing we even need for the day. A lot of those things come from our life, and they really are very interconnected. So this idea of the 80s, the good times, for those that lived through the 80s, it was a very nostalgic. The people who lived through the 80s are just very nostalgic about the 80s. I was very small during the 80s. My husband, that's his formative years. To him, the 80s were everything. So when he wants to get nostalgic, the 80s just makes him feel good. And I think that's where this really comes from. But some of the trends that came out of the 80s, I'm like, can we just leave that in the 80s? I'm not really sure that I want too many wobbly looking lines. I don't really personally like the color palette. I definitely am not doing bangs. No, not ever am I doing that to my hair. I just think that there's a lot of things that, music from the 80s is amazing. So when you want to get nostalgic, I say play Madonna, get some Michael Jackson out, play it in your house and enjoy your 80s moment. But for me, and I know those probably not the most popular 80s musicians, but they were to me. That's what I remember. But I think that the decor, you're going to keep seeing it. Places like CB2 really jumped in on the 80s thing. And I've just felt like the way that the channeling was done on the sofas, a lot of the lighting, a lot of that just had a real 80s feel to it. So it's not gone, but it's just, for me, it just felt too trendy. Oh my goodness. Speaking of the 70s and 80s, why don't we just move on to the 90s? Wow, has anybody noticed all of those 90 reboots? The 90s reboot has been everywhere. Now that's what I remember. I know I'm dating myself, but I grew up really where my formative years were the 90s, and I understand that feeling of nostalgia towards something that you've been through. I know that for me, it felt very good to see TV shows that I grew up with being rebooted and being back in that environment, and really the nostalgia of Dusty Rose and a lot of the colors that my mom would use, the wood tones, and the way that I grew up and the home that I had. I am very nostalgic towards that. I had a great childhood and I love those days. The plaid wallpapers and the burgundies and the hunter greens. Oh, there were some great things that happened in the 90s. And I understand why we would want to reboot it. But the reboots they just don't stay around. I think a lot of those reboots, they were fun and it was a fun thing to do, but we're just ready for something new. We're ready for something fresh. We're ready for something that feels a little bit more long lasting. And when something feels a little too trendy, I think that's when we just all kind of go, I don't know if that's how I want to spend my money. So if you've transformed your home to look like Home Alone, please invite me over because I really want to see it. That is like, for me, I would say that Home Alone was that movie that really just summed up the interiors of the 90s. It's the home that I think of that really just so quintessentially represented the 90s. Either that or like Friends. Those two to me are the 90s to me. And I think that we're going to see the younger generation holding on to the Friends version of the 90s a little while longer. Sorry, I've kicked out the decades. 70s, 80s, and 90s. Sorry, we're just gonna make them leave. So jewel tones, I feel like jewel tones to me, again, that really goes back to like that hunter green, it's sort of those jade colors. I think jewel tones are gonna be less popular in the coming years. I feel like jewel tones really kind of come and go. There's always people who it's like a whole clan of people that just love jewel tones and they just never really leave them. So if that's you, you just find your tribe and stick with your tribe because there's always gonna be a group that just loves jewel tones. And I think that they're really beautiful. I love jewel tones. It's not that I don't like them. It's just that it's not really what I necessarily want to live with all the time. Clearly, I love a neutral palette. It's what we were talking about in the last video. Lewis. We were talking in the last video about what will be staying, and that will be neutral colors. We're gonna see a lot more neutrals. And there's this sort of warmth and natural feel when you're living in neutrals that I just think you just have to be a jewel tone person. You just have to be that person. And that's something that a lot of times is very specific to a personality. And there's nothing wrong with loving that if that's your thing. But I think in general, when you look at big general kinds of trends and you're talking about your state, you're talking about your nation, you're talking about the globe, are we all gonna want jewel tones in the coming year or even 5? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's gonna be, the neutrals are something that we're gonna be seeing globally. I think that maximalism is just, it's had its heyday. Everybody wanted maximalism, but after everything that happened with the pandemic, everybody was just taking stuff out of their houses. And I think that what happened is that a lot of people, myself included, just needed more room to breathe in my house, in our houses. When I look around my house now and I'm like, I needed something that felt more pared back. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have a lot less stuff. It's that I can put some of it away, but decorating in this style where everything out, more is more is more and more, and layer and layer and layer upon layers. I think that in general, again, generalizations, I think that maximalism is going out because people just need spaces that feel calmer and less cluttered. Well, I don't even know if this is even worth talking about because so many people are so vocal about this that I'm like, gosh, I mean, people get so like high strung about it, but I don't think that we're going to be seeing farmhouse as in the style of farmhouse. We've gone from rustic farmhouse to modern farmhouse to luxury farmhouse. It's America. And in Europe, I think of all the beautiful farmhouses, and there's rural homes in every country, but 80% of the population lives in an urban setting. So I think it's time for us to have a style that's geared towards people living in urban settings and celebrating the setting in which we find ourselves. And I think that's what we're gonna start seeing, is that there's gonna be room for a little bit more of a modern, more urban feel. And that doesn't mean that everything's gonna be skyscrapers. It just means that we're just ready for something that's fresh and different. And we wanna be proud and to feel like our home is in its place. Because it always seems a little weird if you're gonna be in a penthouse in New York, but it's dressed like a farmhouse in the country. That juxtaposition seems a little bit strange to me. So I would rather have, when I go to my farmhouse or I go to visit somebody's farmhouse, that it feels like it's in its place. And then when I'm in the city, I want something that feels urban, but it can still have rustic elements. It can still have all that warmth. And that's where we're really gonna see a massive transition from this idea, that feeling that farmhouse gives us. It's that warmth and that love and that family feeling. I think that that's what we really crave, but we can do it in an urban setting. We can do it in a modern way. And I think that's really exciting. And I think we're gonna start seeing more of that. And I'm really excited to see where it takes us. Oh, this is such an interesting one. And this really is one that comes up a lot for me because I do so many renovations. But I think that the idea of the home only office is really kind of going out, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because wow, when the pandemic started, every client I had was asking for a home office, and it was going to be the life. It's where they were going to be, you know, they're literally, that's the only office. That's all there was. It was gonna be the home office was the office. Now what I'm starting to see is that we're having hybrid. Some people are just going back to the office, period, and they're just not even working from home, but what I'm seeing for most people is a hybrid. I think it's really important when you have a home office to make it a place that really expresses your personality, and it really it really encourages you while you're working to really enjoy your work. I think that's really important. One trend I can tell you is not going forward, and I don't really even feel like it caught on, was the Pantone. The color of the year that came out was Very Perry, and yeah, let's look. Yeah, Very Perry. I just feel like that color just, I don't even know what they were talking about. Like, where was that color? Who was using that color? I don't even know. You know what color was really popular? Hot pink. Valentino came out with that hot pink suit, and I am telling you, everything has been hot pink in fashion. I didn't see any purple, really. I know that some people, like my daughter wears a little bit of a purple, kind of periwinkle purple color, but I didn't really see that represented in interiors. I didn't really see it represented that much in fashion, actually. I just don't feel like that was like the color of the year. I know that the paint companies came out with all the greens, and green is probably gonna be sticking around because green is just, again, what we talked about in the other trend video about things that are sticking around. Green is, it's more natural, it brings nature in, whether it's through greenery or if you wanna paint your walls, go for it. It can be all different shades of green, even though they came out with that sage color. I just personally think that Very Perry, I don't know. I don't see it. I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't think we're going to be having that in 2023. We didn't even really have it in 2022. And so I think it's really interesting when you see trends that come out and you're like, oh, do I need to go buy everything in purple? No. Honestly, I really hope more than anything else from these trend videos, it just gets you kind of thinking about what you really care about, what you really love, the home that you're building, and the kind of home that you really, really want. And so that way, when you go to make decisions about what you're purchasing for your home, you can make really good decisions that really give you a lot of longevity in your space and with the things that you've spent your money on. I think that's really important stuff. Your home really is your haven, and there really is no place like home. It's the one place on the planet that you get to be yourself. And so this idea of living well inside of your home is something that we're super passionate about because we believe that it matters. It affects the way that you feel about yourself and the world around you, and I think it's really important. So thank you so much for joining us. I've got a certain little puppy who's just been very relaxed this whole time. Oh. Hi, and we got one that just came home from school. So that is my cue to let you guys go. I'm gonna sip my coffee and catch up with my Parker and find out how the first week of school is going. So make sure you hit subscribe, give the video a big thumbs up, and cheers you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi baby. School.
Good.
Yeah?